In this video, I'm going to look at cash and cash equivalents for the sake of the cash flow statement. So on your cash flow statement, the bottom part of your cash flow statement is obviously going to be your, this is how it actually looks like. It's net change in cash and cash equivalents, right? And then we get this figure by saying cash and cash equivalents at the beginning, then cash and cash equivalents at the end. So in order to get that figure there, you'd normally say this cash and cash equivalents at the end minus cash and cash equivalents at the beginning to give you your net change in cash and cash equivalents. So in other words, for you to get your net change in cash and cash equivalents, you'll have to say cash and cash equivalents at the end minus cash and cash equivalents at the beginning. But I'm going to show you there's a catch. Why is it so important to calculate cash and cash equivalents? Now, if you want to see that your cash flow statement is correct, one way of checking it can actually be to use cash and cash equivalents. Why am I saying so? If I say operating activities plus investing activities plus financing activities, it gives me net change in cash and cash equivalents. So when you do your net change in cash and cash equivalents and you get this figure, if you want to see that your cash flow is correct, when you add your three activities in your cash flow, they must give you that figure, that net change in cash and cash equivalents. If it doesn't give you that figure, then you know that your cash flow is incorrect somewhere. If your cash flow is correct, then it means the addition of the three figures must give you a net change in cash and cash equivalents. Now, sometimes, but I've discovered that it's difficult for some learners to actually do your cash and cash equivalents in this straight line way. So there's an alternative method that I always advise to people to use when they want to deal with the cash and cash equivalents. So what you can do is that I'm going to use an example here. What you can do is let's say this is 2023 and this is 2024. This is the easiest way of doing it. So this is going to be my net change in cash and cash equivalents, right? But whenever they ask you to do cash and cash equivalents, there is always a catch, right, that you need to deal with. There's always a catch, and that catch is that the bank, remember, can be positive if you have money in the bank, or the bank can be overdrawn, which makes it negative. That's your bank overdraft. So normally when they ask you to calculate cash and cash equivalents or net change in cash and cash equivalents, it's because the bank might actually be overdrawn, right? So what do you do? So you're going to put your cash and cash equivalents. I'm going to just use rough figures here, hypothetical figures there. So let's say my cash and cash equivalents was 2,000 here, and then I had a bank overdraft of 1,000. Obviously know that the bank overdraft is going to be in brackets. And then this year, let's say my cash and cash equivalents is 3,000, and there is no bank overdraft. So what you do is, in order to do your net change in cash, because the net change in cash and cash equivalents that you need is this figure here. This is the one that you need. So what I can do in 2023, I can actually add my cash and cash equivalents here. It's 2,000 plus negative 1,000. This will give me 1,000, right? Because this is a minus, and then this will give me 3,000. So net change in cash and cash equivalents is then obtained by saying 3,000 minus 1,000, which is going to give me 2,000 here. But I can still get the 2,000 by working downwards, right? How so? If I check here, if I say current year, which is 2024 minus 2023, it gives me 1,000. If I say 0 minus negative 1,000, remember, if you're doing maths, a double minus gives you a positive, right? So if you put on your calculator and you say 0 minus minus, that is a double minus, it will give you a positive, which means this one gives me 1,000. You can test that with your calculator. If I say 1,000 plus 1,000, gives me 2,000. If I say 3,000 minus 1,000, it still gives me 2,000. But when they give you bank, or when they give you to calculate cash and cash equivalents, the catch is actually for them to see if you know how to calculate your bank overdraft. So it is very critical here, especially here, that you know that this 1,000 is already a negative figure, and here you are subtracting. So you're saying 3,000 minus 2,000. Here you're saying 0 minus 1,000. It's already a negative figure. So there's a double minus. If you don't put a double minus, your answer is going to be incorrect. And normally when they give you net change in cash and cash equivalents to calculate, there is a bank overdraft. They want to see if you're able to handle the calculation of the inclusion of bank overdraft in your cash and cash equivalents. But you also understand this better when you look at the videos that you've got calculations. This is just a theory. Thank you.